Hey guys, Dan here along with Tim. Hello, Tim.
Hi, everybody.
We're over the old Zoom once again for Dan Does Disney. We're going to talk about Rob Roy, the Highland Rogue, not to be confused with the Liam Neeson Rob Roy of the 90s, although same character really.
Yes, it
Um,
is.
not, was that Disney though? That wasn't Disney, was it?
That wasn't Disney, no.
Okay. Yeah, it's not like Disney owns the rights that's based on a book, and then the book is based on sort of is it a real guy or just the myth of a
Yeah,
guy?
real guys. I think it's like kind of like a little bit of a legend as well.
Yeah, that's kind of the sense I got. It was more like a tall tale kind of thing. But I guess okay, so he was real anyway. All right, so there's not a huge ton of background on this, as you might imagine with some of these live actioners, but this is the first from 1954 that we're going to look at, and this was the final one in the Walt Disney sort of costume era. We talked about this last time with Sword in the Roses. This is pretty much the same cast and crew, except for the director is different. This is Harold French, and I forget the guy before, but he did Robin Hood and he did Sword in the Rose, and I guess there were some issues with the British film company that he was assigned to, and so they didn't want to loan him out again. So Disney said, "All right, we'll get this French dude, Harold French, to come in and film this." So this made not a lot of money at the box office. I couldn't actually even find full figures about this, but it was made for 1.8 million. Disney had said that it did better overseas than it did in the U.S., which makes sense because that was the same as Sword in the Rose, really. Um, and basically, this is another, like we were saying, classic sort of English story. Maybe based on a real person, whatever, but back in 1938, there was a British film company that was going to make this called Gainsborough Films or Gainsborough Pictures, which I had to look up. I've never heard of them. Were you familiar with that, Tim?
no.
Yeah. Apparently, it shuttered in the early 50s, so it would make sense that we wouldn't really have heard of them. But it was in England for about 15 years, and this was going to be one of their big tentpole movies in the late 30s, and then the World War II came and sort of thwarted all of those plans. So they decided against it. So, like we talked about before with Sword in the Rose, this was a lot of the same people involved here. We have, a lot of the same cast, which Tim will sort of go over here in a little bit. But one thing that was interesting is that a lot of the extras that were used for the battle scenes were actually soldiers that had just come back from the Korean War, part of the Sutherland Highlanders and the Argyle Highlanders that were just back from the war. So they were already, I guess they brought probably their own costumes, or, well, I guess they wouldn't have brought their own costumes for this, but they at least knew how to do sort of battle poses and stuff like that. Um, and then the other thing is our good friend, the lead actor Richard Todd, had an injury early on. The first battle scene they were shooting, he twisted his ankle in a rabbit hole, so they had to postpone some scenes for about a week or two for him to heal. But really, there's not much I could find elsewhere about the production of this. Obviously, kind of the diminishing returns at the box office led Walt to shy away from all of the costume type pieces. This is the final RKO Pictures film. We've seen that logo in pretty much everything since, I think, Snow White was RKO.
Yeah,
Um,
I think there might have been one that wasn't RKO. I forget what it
yeah,
was, though.
I think it was one of the ones you and I did recently because RKO
Oh,
didn't
you know
want.
what it was? I
Was it the
think it was
documentary?
no. I think it was the Victory Through Air Power. I don't think RKO did
Oh,
that.
okay. Okay, right
I
on.
might be wrong,
Uh,
but that's what I think.
no, that actually sounds right. I think that might be right. Well, and there had been tensions with Disney and RKO because we've talked in a couple of these about like RKO, didn't really think this was going to work or this and that. So this was the last of the RKOs, and then the next one we're going to do, which is one of the documentaries, is apparently just not with any sort of studio label on it. It was just sort of self-produced and whatever. So I guess we'll see that. And then right after that is when Disney created Buena Vista Pictures. So everything moving forward. And was Living Desert Buena Vista too?
I think you talked about that.
Yeah.
I think I was listening to that on the car ride home today, and I think we were talking about Buena Vista.
Buena Vista. Okay, so maybe that was the first one. Okay, I thought there was something with the documentaries. Yeah, so RKO apparently didn't want to finance the documentary, so that was another sticking point for Walt because he was like all about trying to make these full-length documentaries. So, so I guess this is the last one of the RKO, but they didn't last much longer anyway. I think they shuttered in the '60s at some point.
Yeah.
So that's about it from that. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I don't really have much else. I mean, Queen Elizabeth II showed up to the premiere for this in 1953. So I'm sure that was very exciting. But other than that, it did not ever get a theatrical release. It was one of these that they put, they split into 2 hours for the Disneyland show, which is kind of odd because it's only like 80 minutes or something. So they must have had a lot of commercials or Walt blathering on, or maybe they ran a short or something. But to fill 2 hours for this one movie, even with commercials, is a little extreme. And it was released on VHS one time, 1985, and then released on DVD through the Disney Movie Club only. And that's it. You mentioned last week, I think this is not on Disney Plus.
It is not.
It is on, I think it's one of the ones on Amazon Prime, though. Most of the ones, even if they're not on Disney Plus, you can get them as like a download on Prime.
Maybe that's why we can't find some on Disney Plus. Maybe they still have contracts with Amazon Prime and they have to wait for those contracts to expire.
That could be, but I feel like, I mean, a lot of the stuff that, I mean, like Big Hero 6 is on Amazon Prime too, and I'm sure that's on Plus, So I don't know. I'm not sure what the thinking is, whether it's something they just don't have enough interest in. I mean, obviously it takes bandwidth if you're going to put it up on there or whatever, but I don't know. But yes, you can rent this for $2.99 or buy it for $9.99 on Prime Video if you're so inclined to do so. You can also buy the DVD on there for $40, which I think we can all say is not recommended. I think $40 is a little steep for this movie. And
as the DVD, it comes up with the menu, and all you have the option is play. You don't have any other option.
I don't think I've ever seen a DVD where the only option is play. Usually, there's at least like closed caption choices or TV specifications. Yeah, like this is. I mean, talk about bare bones. Now, I do have a few DVDs from the early days where there's no menu; it just goes right into the movie. Like Beetlejuice, one of those. Uncle Buck, I think, is one of those too, where there's no menu at all. But still, yeah, it has a menu, but the only option is play or nothing.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. So that's all I really have here on the Rob Roy saga. So let's hear from you about the plot of this film.
Okay. So there's a lot going on in this movie. So I'm trying to sum it up as best I can.
Okay.
It's a wartime adventure of the Scottish Highland leader Rob Roy McGregor during the reign of the German king George the First in the 18th century. So that's based off history. They wanted to replace the king with James Stewart and have like an actual English king instead of a German king, and that's why the Scottish rebelled. Maybe they wanted a Scottish king or something like that. I don't know, but if you watch Outlander, you probably would know this stuff as well.
Did you ever see the Liam Neeson Rob Roy?
No.
Okay, I haven't either.
No. So it starts off with the Scottish Duke of Argyll defeating Rob Roy and his McGregor clansmen in a skirmish, but the Duke of Argyll shows sympathy by not unleashing his full force in attempts to establish order and peace. Rob Roy is imprisoned, though. He escapes imprisonment and returns home to marry his love, Helen Mary. But their wedding celebration is cut short when the Duke of Montrose, the new Secretary of State for Scotland, informs them that all clans are pardoned except for the McGregors. And the McGregors have to lose their name as well. And Rob Roy is arrested again. With a daring escape, Rob Roy is now a rogue and leading another uprising. When things are on the brink of another war, can Rob swallow his pride, make amends with Argyle to create peace with England? The fact that the tales of Rob Roy and his daringness have reached the King George in London might work out in their favor.
Maybe. What a movie this is.
Well, one of the things that you did not like about The Sword and the Rose is there was not much action in it. This has a lot more action.
You're right. I will admit this certainly was, I think, scratching an itch that people might have had that The Sword and the Rose was missing, which was the no action. However, I think my biggest issue with this is the lackluster ending. First of all, it just kind of ends. I mean, there's, you know, I think they could have easily made this an extra 10 minutes and had some sort of exposition. Like, at the end, it just seemed like, time-wise, I was like, this has got to be wrapping up. So I looked, and there was like a minute and a half left or something, and I was like, wow, okay, they're really going to just kind of rush the ending and,
well,
throw it in.
I kind of appreciate the ending in one way because I felt like it kind of book-ended. Well, not really book-ended, but like at one point you get Mary's father like telling war stories and stuff like that, and she interrupts him, and it just kind of seems like that's the type of community that these Scottish people live in, is like they sit around and tell stories, and that's how it ends. And it also, the people telling the story are obviously embellishing it from what actually we saw.
Yes, quite tall tales.
Like, yeah, I feel like that's the epitome of Rob Roy, is that he's a real person, that his stories kind of become a little bit more epic and kind of becomes like a more of a tall tale and a legend, where he is a real person. But so I appreciated that for that reason, but it does kind of abruptly end.
All right, I can see what you're saying. So as a metaphor for the Rob Roy character himself.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
I hope that's what they were going for, but that's what I kind of felt.
Okay. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. How do you feel about...
I think those were my couple of my favorite scenes were the tall tale scenes, especially the first one with her father and her interrupting, because it's Glynis Johns is probably the best part of this movie, but sadly she's not the main focus like she was in The Sword and the Rose.
She is not in this movie very much at all compared to Sword and the Rose.
Yes, but anytime she's in it, she's lighting up the screen.
Yes.
She had great chemistry with Richard Todd again, and I thought she had great on-screen chemistry with the people playing her parents, especially her father.
Yeah, I mean, I would say probably the greatest strength of this movie is that these actors and crew members all have already worked together now on 2 or 3 films. So, yeah, I mean, there's certainly some good camaraderie there that you can tell through the chemistry of the acting. I do agree with that. And Glynis Johns, I mean, before 3 weeks ago, I only ever knew her as Mrs. Banks in Mary Poppins. But she's obviously done a lot of other things, and I've been very impressed with her in these movies that we've seen.
So acting wise, we have the main character Rob Roy, played by Richard Todd, who is Robin Hood, and I forget what his name was.
Sword and the Rose Man.
And then you have Glynis Johns as Helen Mary. James Robertson Justice, who was Little John, and then he was King Henry eighth in Sword in the Rose, he plays the Duke of Argyle, which is kind of, he's somewhat of the enemy to Rob, and then somewhat of an ally as well. And then Michael Gough, or Gough, is the Duke of Montrose. I feel like he's not really in it that much, but he was the romantic rival in the Sword of the Rose. And then the only other actor name that I put down here, I put down Eric Pullman. He played the King George the First, the German king. I really like that character. I thought it was some comic relief as well for that character. He's not in much,
the
but I
only
really
comedy
liked
in
him.
this movie.
Yeah. I don't know what else he was in, like this guy, but I thought his character was pretty good.
Yeah, I didn't recognize him from Sword in the Rose.
No, he was. I don't think he was.
Was he in it?
I don't think only the four main people were in Sword of the Rose, from what I gathered. Yeah. I mean, maybe other people were, but the four main people from Sword of the Rose moved over to this one as well.
Here's where you might know the king from. What's his name? Eric Pullman?
Yes, Pohlman.
Yeah, he was in some of the James Bond movies, I guess.
I don't see that many.
You know what? No, but it looks like he was a voice only. This is in like some of the Sean Connery ones. I've never seen any of those, but from Russia with Love and Thunderball, so he did a couple of those. But I guess if it's just his voice, you wouldn't recognize him anyway. Yeah, I mean, other than that, he's just done like little things here or there. Oh, but he plays another king in a movie called John Paul Jones. Was that Disney? No, it's a Warner Brothers movie. All right, so we don't really know him from anybody, but yeah, he was good in this. I agree.
Yeah.
The only comedy that came out of this movie.
Yeah. So one of the negatives that I have is, yes, there's a lot of action, there's a lot of battle scenes, there's a lot of sword fights and gunplays, and some of that's really good, but there's some really bad shots in the opening battle. When it's like green screen to get close-ups of Richard Todd, and it looks so bad.
Yeah, I don't know if they had to do reshoots or something with that, but it doesn't look good.
Maybe because he twisted his ankle in that rabbit hole or gopher hole, they had to do reshoots for that. But there was like 2 or 3 of them, and it like the fighting looked good, and then all of a sudden you have like these close-up shots of his face, like shooting a gun or something like that. But the background of it is a green screen of the fighting, and it looks so fake.
Yeah, very bad editing or directing, or I'm not sure whose fault that was, but you're right. Maybe that was because
think about it, was probably had to be reshot because of him twisting his ankle or something like that. But I mean, it did what they needed to do, but it just doesn't hold up. I mean, I don't even know it held up at the time for 1950s.
Yeah. Well, also, and that's kind of what I was thinking. Like, so this had a $1.8 million budget, which in the 1950s was a lot. Yeah. I feel like this looks by far the worst of the 3 like really big deal epics. I mean, we talked about all the different painted backdrops. That was Sword in the Rose, right? With all the and most, I mean, a couple of those maybe I didn't love, but most of that looked really amazing. And here, I guess because they were shooting more on location, they didn't really have a lot of, painted sets. But because of that, things didn't necessarily match up if they were doing reshoots, like you said. Yeah. So
I thought the scenery was okay for a lot of it, and some of it looked really stunning for its vastness. But there's some bad shots as well. His daring escapes, he has like 2 of them, and one of them when he's going over the waterfall looks so fake.
That was horrible.
It's so bad. And then like even that whole scene is like he like dives underwater and we can see him and people are like shooting at him and like, where is he? I'm like, he's right there.
Yeah.
Like not doing a good job of swimming away, and it makes this daring escape not that much daring.
Not very daring.
And then his second daring escape is him like climbing a mountain and jumping over like a gap and grabbing a tree branch. But when he grabs that tree branch, it looks pretty fake as well. But yeah,
Yeah, there were definitely some shots. How about, I know this is Disney-fied and everything, but there was a lot of swordplay and gunplay in this movie, and just there's never anybody with scratches. There's no bloodshed. I mean, I know that it's a Disney movie, but like, I feel like even in the 40s and 50s, we saw movies where there were actual physical effects of people being in sword fights and such. And that detracted a little bit for me.
yeah,
Just because I just don't think, like, I don't think these movies, even in the 50s, are necessarily like, they're not really kids movies. So
yeah.
I get,
They are showing death, but it's just not super bloody or anything like that.
yeah, well, it's not bloody at all.
Yeah, well,
Um,
blood, yeah.
but
You just
I mean,
have
and I get
to,
that it's Disney, but I just feel like this is obviously for a more adult audience than a lot of the other stuff. Certainly, Sword in the Rose was as well.
yeah.
Um,
But again, like I feel like they weren't making super family movies. I think probably Disney was the only game in town making family movies, weren't they?
I guess so. I mean, I don't know. Like, I think some of the musicals that were out at the time would have been like family friendly. I don't think a lot of the
Yeah.
musicals were like crazy, but yeah, I mean,
But there's like it's not like you have movies that are like super geared towards kids. Don't like
right.
I
Other than the
feel like
Disney
this is
animated
still a
movies, I
movie.
guess
I
I'm.
feel like this is still a movie that parents would take their kids to because I mean they're taking their kids to go see gangster movies at this time as
Right.
well.
Yeah,
So
you're right.
like it and so they probably for Disney and his family brand, he just what didn't make it bloody, even though there was a lot of violent things of battles and stuff like that. It just wasn't
Yeah.
super or
Well,
bloody.
I mean, I don't know if kids would have been bored with this at the time or not. I found it, even with all the action, I found it a bit boring. But I will say, of all like movie genres, I think costume dramas is like my least favorite.
Yeah.
So I didn't really expect to like this or Sword in the Rose that much anyway. Um, but yeah, I mean, the acting keeps this
Yeah.
afloat a bit,
I,
and certainly the short runtime is all.
Glennis Johns, her character of Helen Mary is a strong female character. She's the voice of
Yeah,
reason, and probably would be the only reason I would recommend this movie is for her acting. I mean, the other people's acting is good as well. Richard Todd does a good performance, and everybody else does a good performance. But she definitely does a notch above
oh
everybody.
she's far and away the best one here. And we talked about this last time. She had won her Oscar before all this Disney stuff, right? What did we decide she won her Oscar for? Let
It
me
was
see if I can find
did
it.
she win? Or she nominated? I think she was just nominated.
Oh, you're right. You're right. And it wasn't. It was actually after all this. It was before Mary Poppins,
Okay.
but it was about 5 years after this. It was for a movie called The Sundowners in
Okay.
1960. So, yeah. So I guess she was still up and coming at this point. But yeah, boy, she's far and away, the best actress in this movie. And I do like that she always seems to pick these very female positive characters.
Yeah.
Discussed that last time too, but
Yeah. Um,
that's another one. So
the only other thing I have written down here, I complained about the dance scene in Sword and the Rose.
oh
I thought that was boring. This dance scene was a lot better.
yes,
The whole
but
wedding ceremony was great. It was a great look into Scottish traditions and stuff like that. It was very upbeat. The dancing was fun. So I thought that was a step above Sword in the Rose.
what did it remind me of, Tim?
What did it remind you of?
Yeah,
I don't know.
when they go on the Titanic and they go
Uh,
below deck where
the
they're
below
having.
deck party.
It just reminded me of Jack and Cora dancing down there. Yes, no, I agree. This didn't seem as like forced as Sword in the Rose.
Well, I mean, it was two different types of dancing. The other one was kind of like, kind of traditional dancing. I think it's this also is also two different time periods. Um,
Yeah, I guess that's true. What was Sword in the Rose? Like the late 1800s, maybe?
I, I just know
I
it's two
forgot.
different things of England, so so it's two different time periods.
I guess that's true. Yes. I mean, this is like way back. This is like in the 1700s, though.
Yeah,
Rob Roy. So
uh, yeah. So this is the dancing and the whole marriage ceremony. I thought was very fun. Um,
But see,
so
why couldn't they have had something tacked on at the end that was in that same spirit?
they just wanted that final shot of the two of them together. I don't know.
Which was okay, but I
I
mean,
mean,
it just
it was a very pretty shot. It was the two of them. You had a nice vast Scottish background in the back. The sun was setting.
yeah, it
Um,
was nice.
yeah,
Roll credits and the
roll
end.
credits. Well, I mean, these days roll credits is just saying the end because all the credits are in the front.
That's true. All this had at the end was a list of all the characters,
Yeah.
and the actors. So I also thought, I mean, I don't know if maybe this has been cleaned up for the Amazon Prime version if you rent it, but I also thought the quality of the filming on the DVD was not very good. Everything's very dark. Um,
Yeah, I would probably put it with like the on par with Treasure Island.
yeah, I think maybe even this is a little worse, but in terms of the lighting. But yeah, I don't know. They obviously don't take a lot of effort to clean up some of these old films, which is weird because a lot of the old like shorts and stuff that I have on other DVDs like look fantastic, and you'd think they would want to clean up their full length features.
Well, this is
Just
also
the
for
same,
Disney
but
TV Club on a DVD that you can only hit play. So
yeah, it, yeah, whatever the opposite of no expense spare, that's what they did here.
yeah,
Um, All right. Well, I mean, there's no use really in grading the DVD because the DVD is just the movie. So the movie grade, I guess, is the DVD grade too. But I don't know. This is not one that I would ever really go back to. This for me is definitely in like the B minus type of camp.
yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was either thinking I'd probably today as a viewer I'd give it a C plus, but I mean
Mhm.
just I mean for the time period I mean of the 1950s, I give it a slight bump, especially for just Glennis Johns. I mean I
Yeah.
give it a B,
No. There's
give it a B minus just for her.
There's no doubt she's great. Yeah, I mean, look, I kind of want to give it the benefit of the doubt because this is not my kind of movie. So, I'm sure other people like that really love period piece costume dramas may get more enjoyment out of it than I did. Um, but yeah, this is of the ones we've watched. This is definitely lower tier for me.
Yeah.
So we were kind of talking off air here about our next foray, and there's a few interesting ones coming up. Next, we go back to the old documentary trend, but then coming up very soon is 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which I think I've seen like as a kid. Like I feel like that's a movie my dad would
It
have
might have,
really liked.
I don't think I've seen all of it.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure if I have or not. And if I have, it's been
And
35
they used to
years.
have a ride at Disney World called that. And
Okay.
I probably went on it a couple times when I was really little, but by the time I would have memories of going on it, they changed it into something else.
Okay. Yeah, they definitely do that from time to time. Yeah, I remember I feel like we rented it or something on VHS, or maybe they ran it on the Wonderful World of Disney and we watched it that way. But I vaguely remember watching the movie, but it's been a long, long time. So I'm excited to see that again. But we have a bunch of these documentaries to get to, and so we'll do one of those next. What's the next one? The prayer
Vanishing Prey.
The Vanishing Prairie. And then I think after those two, it might be time for me and Joe to tackle Lady and the Tramp.
No, I think we have some.
No?
I think we have some Davy Crockett's in there.
Oh, you're
Uh,
right. You're right. The first of the two Davy Crockett's, I think, is
and then maybe Swiss Family Robinson as well before.
no, that's definitely after Lady and the Tramp. Yeah,
Uh,
but after Lady and the Tramp, there's like 15 non-animated ones. So we're gonna get to like all the rest of the documentaries and the other Davy Crockett movie and Swiss Family Robinson and I forget what else. But at some point, we're gonna get to my favorite era, which is the '60s. Slapsticky type comedies with the Shaggy Dog and the Herbie the Love Bug and all of those. But all right, well that'll do it for this. I'm sort of glad, to be honest, that we're moving out of the costume drama period of Disney. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm excited to see what comes next. I don't think I've seen the David Crockett movies, but I mean, it kind of I just kind of picturing in my mind, it's kind of like more of like the Treasure Island, like.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Because I mean, David Crockett's young, right?
I don't
We know
know.
that song in Back to the
I
Future.
imagine he's not at the Alamo. That's the only thing, is because there's a sequel.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, thank you, Tim, for joining us on Dan Does Disney, and we'll see everybody next time.
Bye, everybody.
All right. What a good movie.